Sovereign wealth funds are touted to be the leading forces for stimulating a country's economy. This has been done so by investing capital and ensuring a good rate of return over time. The investments come in many forms. Some have chosen to buy into the equity markets, some have poured it into infrastructure developments, and some have given it to startups as capital. These have all in many ways ensured stability and growth for a huge wealth of one's nation. But among Asian nations, especially in the Southeast, sovereign wealth funds aren't of utmost importance. Singapore, of course, is an outlier due to its status as the world's financial hub. But for the remaining others, only a few nations have taken up this opportunity. This brings us to Malaysia, one of the only few countries in the entire continent to bolster up with its own sovereign wealth fund. The leading sovereign wealth fund known to the country is the Khazanah Nasional Berhad, a fund that has over $30 billion worth of realized assets. Khazanah today is regarded as Malaysia's long-term investment company, insured just like other wealth funds in helping sustain the wealth of the Malaysian citizens. How the fund is run, however, is quite unlikely for most other sovereign wealth funds. Khazanah Nasional's investments are majority placed in the country of Malaysia, whereas other sovereign wealth funds are known for displacing their capital in favor of foreign assets. This has been mainly due to the need for a more diversified economy, as too much reliance on national development could also be seen as a risk at times. Well, that is mostly applied in oil-rich countries. But anyway, Khazanah Nasional's investment does not entirely mean it has fully taken every single piece of its cash into Malaysia. Their portfolio as of 2021 has a 63.5% stake in Malaysia. The remainder of its stakes are mostly spread across Asia, particularly China. These investments, on the other hand, are spread across numerous industries and a long line of history. Since Khazanah's establishment in 1993, as the funds grew, so have its options to invest in bigger and better companies. Amongst its biggest investments since its inception, Khazanah has been the backer of Putrajaya Holdings, which undertook the development of Putrajaya way back in 1995. They also took massive stakes in the country's financial and banking sector, buying major interests in Bank Bumi Petra in 1998, and RHB Bank and Malayan Banking in 1999. The 21st century, however, earmarked the era of the true rise of Khazanah Nasional. This was probably due to the rising economy of Malaysia and all the investments that Khazanah benefited from. It had gone on to move its headquarters over to the Petronas Twin Towers and successfully made its first overseas investments, reaching countries from Saudi Arabia to India, China, and Indonesia, all of which were done by 2005. Throughout the following years, its investments would rise. In 2004, its net asset value would grow from $7.3 billion to over $19.1 billion by 2021, making a huge increase of about 5.8 in compounded annual growth rate. It takes pride in not only growing the fund, but paying down dividends to the government of Malaysia. This enabled the government to have a new source of revenue, which helps stability in the balance of payment, which impacts taxes. In 2004, they had given just around $8.9 million worth of dividends, but by 2021, it grew to over $446 million. This is likewise influenced by its growing interests as a wealth fund and its stakes that have grown over the decades. Today, Khazanah Nasional is a far bigger influence in the very society of Malaysia than most people think. Sure, it does not have as huge of an influence in terms of capital compared to the likes of Singapore's wealth fund, but its investments in Malaysia have provided numerous fundings and open opportunities it could not have opened. Amongst the largest companies that Khazanah Nasional holds a stake in today are Telekom Malaysia, which is the national connectivity and digital infrastructure provider of the nation. They also hold stakes in Astro Malaysia Holdings, which operates in the similar industry of telecommunications. Their operations are even stretched into healthcare through IHH Healthcare, and into air and air infrastructures through Malaysian Airports and Malaysia Aviation Group. Finally, their big stakes have helped improve infrastructure and real estate developments, a key economic development strategy that has been seen across Malaysia. Khazanah's stake in the Iskandar development, Southern Marina development, and UEM Sunrise have sparked and helped push domestic and foreign investments in Malaysia. Lastly, Khazanah is also behind the numerous funding for the technological revolution taking place in recent years. It would be amongst the backers for Indian unicorn startups Flipkart and China-based Ant Group, both of which would embark on becoming global renowned brands. While Khazanah has indeed grown into a marvelous achievement, that is not to say it was perfectly done. In the past years from 2017 to 2021, the Wealth Fund would eventually report losses. In 2018, it would report a net loss of $1.7 billion, and in 2021, it would be around $336 million of losses. The remaining years, however, were years' worth of profit. Now, Khazanah is just one part of a larger story. Malaysia houses numerous other non-sovereign wealth funds, commonly known as government-owned investment management companies. While not entirely different from how the sovereign wealth fund handles its investments, these other instruments that Malaysia's government leveraged were also among the leading factors in driving wealth from Malaysia. One of these fund management companies is Permodalan Nasional Berhad. Like Khazanah Nasional, has investments spread across the entire world and in numerous industries. But what makes Permodalan better, however, is that it is larger. According to its 2021 annual report, Permodalan Nasional is reported holding assets under management of over 336 billion Malaysian ringgit, or around 75 billion US dollars, which makes the fund worth more than double that of Khazanah. This heavy asset company would probably be influenced directly due to its strong stakes in international and local property, along with the banks. They own 47% of Maybank, also known to be the country's most valuable bank brand, and one of the largest in the world in terms of assets. Maybank alone holds more than $200 billion worth of assets. Permodalan Nasional would also hold a key strategic tie with a massive amount of real estate, a known instrument that holds big value. One of these real estate developments is known as the Merdeka 118, the building which is known to be the second tallest building ever constructed. But most of its ties of investments are directly influenced by Malaysian public companies. Permodalan and Khazanah are just amongst the many more funds out there in Malaysia. More than likely, however, these two are viewed as the largest in the entire landscape. We've obviously seen the other sovereign wealth known as 1MDB, which experienced a collapse due to kleptocracy. 1MDB, however, should not be tied to how the other funds are managed. It had been evident through their historical years of operations and actual returns to the government and the people, which provided numerous benefits. The wealth of Malaysians, through different vehicles to grow them, is more than likely going to keep growing. What the future holds is hard to predict, but we think that Malaysia, like its Singaporean counterpart, which holds nearly 1 trillion Singaporean dollars in wealth funds, is going to be the same in the coming future. Malaysia holds a key strategic value, one that has been stretched for more than a decade now, which makes its destination all but unique amongst other Southeast Asian nations. Furthermore, Malaysia's economy is immensely rich when it comes to its natural resources, which have been noted to be key in driving these wealth funds. Malaysia is the same, but quite a majority of what influenced the wealth fund is from its high-value industries, one that is also less likely seen across the developing Southeast Asian nations. But before we end the video, I think it is right to first answer, where is Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund, or any other investment money coming from? Well, it is a very diverse instrument that gathers money from around the nation. Malaysia's wealth fund was more than likely gathered from years of growth and profit, but also due to the country's reserves, trade, loans, bonds, and natural resources. The country has a huge amount of reserves, but also a huge amount of trade surplus, one that has been consistent in generating money for the government. With a huge surplus in their trade due to high-value sectors, it is more probable to rather invest the money than to keep it in the bank. But that investment opinion, however, is not entirely true for everything, as it could have more options to be used for. Anyway, what do you think?